Hi, I'm Sean, one of the editors at Manx Radio. Now, as you may have heard, in Tynwald this week, the Infrastructure Minister, Haywood, has paused plans to set up a housing association on the island and instead will be looking at a new government-led housing agency. So just what is this and how is it going to differ from those housing association plans? Dr Haywood joined myself and Ben on Manx Radio Breakfast to explain more.
I think we have to be really careful. So the housing agency is really an internal DIY move. It's taking our housing division and setting it aside from the rest of the department. The proposal for a housing agency was made a couple of years ago now, and Tynwald debated it with the Tolson report and decided they wanted something that was an on-island provider, not an off-island provider, and that's what we went away to investigate. And the Altair report that was commissioned was basically to look into one particular model of delivering that housing association. But if anyone's read the report, and we published it so that it could be read by everyone, it's quite clear that model had some flaws in it. And so although the concept of a housing association is still a valid one and a good one, the direction that Altair had suggested we go, which was based on how they run big associations in the UK, but we're talking about housing associations there with 80,000 properties, so it's at a vastly different scale to the Isle of Man. And they hadn't really understood the Manx context in their report either. So when you read that report, it kind of comes out with a direction that just had so many flaws in it, it wasn't possible to follow. So pressing pause on that is quite sensible. It will allow us to investigate other options for delivering a housing association, which might be a charitable trust. It might be that we have volunteer directors that get involved in that. And we were nervous as well about creating another arm's length body that we handed over all of the government housing stock to, and then we didn't have any political input into. So there were several problems with that model. So we've pressed pause on that, and meanwhile in the department it's given us the chance to refocus the housing division into creating a housing agency. And the difference there will be that we have a board that's overseeing what that division is doing, and so we'll be able to bring in non-executive directors into that board to provide additional advice and support and direction for where that housing is going.
Now, the Altair report itself, it cost £79,000. I think one or two of your colleagues yesterday did question what was the point of spending that money to not follow the recommendations of the report. What's your response to that?
Well, we said to Altair, go away and investigate what this looks like and come back with it. And that's what they've done. But it was quite clear when you went through that report that there were several options for delivering a housing association that weren't considered, which had made people understandably nervous. There was also a lack of consultation with the local authorities, because although they were all written to, they were given literally a week to respond. And many local authorities only meet once a month. So giving them a week to respond to something wasn't acceptable at all. So a really low level of local authority feedback into that. And it created a huge amount of nerves with the local authorities, who saw it as some sort of, and I think even Altair suggested it, that we could take over all the local authority social housing as well. And it looked like it was an empire building move. So I think there was some real, Altair had investigated one model, and to be fair to the company, that's the model of delivering a housing association that they know, but that wasn't perhaps the report that we needed. So I wasn't around when that report was commissioned, but when you start reading through at the end of it, you end up finding some of the problems with it.
You've touched on it a bit there, but we had a question from one of our listeners earlier about whether having multiple agencies such as DOI and local authorities responsible for different parts of housing, whether that actually works, or should housing be brought under one department. But is that something you're keen to avoid?
To be fair to the local authorities, a lot of them deliver their housing for their local people really, really, really well. They do a fantastic service. They provide excellent support. Their housing officers know their tenants. It means you get that personalised support when you walk into the town hall or go into the office to talk to somebody about your particular property. They know the property well. They know you. They know your paying habits. They know the problems that you might have, and they're kind and compassionate in how they deal with their tenants. And I don't think that model is necessarily broken. There are some economies of scale that we could get if we can get the local authorities to work together on purchasing, for example, and so there is scope for closer collaboration. But actually, I don't really have a problem with local authorities running it. I genuinely do believe that there are some excellent local authority housing officers, and they're doing really, really good support for their tenants. And of course, the standards that they're running to and the rent levels and everything like that, they're all centrally set. And things like shared waiting lists and the tenancy agreements, that's all centrally. So there is a kind of a standardised provision, whether it comes from DOI or whether it comes from local authorities or whether it comes from the sheltered housing associations around the island. We have a whole kind of range of provision. And I think what DOI should be doing and could be doing a bit better is that we should be coordinating more with that. So between Mr Hooper and myself, we have invited the local authorities to come to a housing conference that we'll be holding in the summer, which is something that used to happen a while ago, hasn't happened for ages, and it's really about working with them as providers in the space to make sure that we're all on the same page, we're all hitting the same standards, and to see how we can drive things forward.
You talked about the importance of political oversight in housing. There are a number of public services, health, for example, that are run by arm's length organisations already without that political oversight. Why, for housing, is that so necessary?
Because I think housing is so fundamental to well-being for communities. It's one of the first things that everyone talks about on the doorstep. Delivery of good housing and accessibility of housing comes right up there. And I think there is an increasing nervousness amongst politicians about handing things over to arm's length where we don't actually have a steer on it. I was lucky enough to talk to my compatriots in Guernsey and Jersey recently, and they are struggling slightly with their housing association models where they've taken it out away from political control, because what the housing association wants to do is not necessarily what's aligned with the socio-economic goals of the government.
So in terms of where it goes from here, when will people of the Isle of Man actually start to see more affordable housing, more social housing available?
We're working, it takes time to deliver housing. We are working on the plans already. So having taken this through Tynwald yesterday, I'll be back down in the department once we finish the Tynwald sitting this week. Work starts on getting the agency set up, and I hope to have that in place before the summer. And then already we've got a development officer post that we've advertised. So once we've got that in post as well, that's to start that development and start getting housing coming through.
Thank you for making it to the end of the Manx Radio Newscast. You are obviously someone with exquisite taste. May I politely suggest you might want to subscribe to this and a wide range of Manx Radio podcasts at your favourite podcast provider, so our best bits will magically appear on your smartphone. Thank you.